Welcome to our deep dive into the world of computer vision. We're tackling the second edition of Modern Computer Vision with PyTorch, and wow, you've given us excerpts from nearly every chapter. Looks like you're ready to get deep into this stuff.
It's ambitious, yeah. That's what makes this deep dive so exciting, though. We're going to go beyond the surface.
Right to the heart of it.
Exactly. We'll uncover how these concepts are actually used and
Yeah.
why they're so game-changing.
Okay, so the book starts by talking about this big shift in computer vision, moving away from traditional machine learning and into AI territory. Specifically, neural networks. What makes this shift so significant?
Well, it's fascinating, really. We've gone from manually telling computers what a dog is, like, okay, it has pointy ears, a wagging tail,
Right.
to letting them figure it out themselves. Neural networks can learn directly from the image data, which is huge. Instead of coding every detail, we feed the network a ton of dog pictures.
And it just learns the patterns.
Yeah, deciphers the patterns on its own. It's a whole different ballgame.
That's incredible. So it's like teaching a computer to see, like we do. But how does a network actually learn? All this talk about neurons and activation functions and back propagation, it can be a little intimidating.
It's definitely complex, but the book does a great job breaking it down. Think of a neuron as a tiny decision maker analyzing information from the image.
Right.
So each input, like say the brightness of a pixel, gets a weight showing how important it is. Then there's a bias, kind of a starting point, and then an activation function is applied.
I'm with you so far. But why the activation function? What does that do?
Okay, so imagine you're trying to draw a really detailed picture, but you can only use straight lines.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty limited, right? Activation functions add the curves and bends, that nonlinearity, to capture those complex relationships in the image. So like a ReLU function.
Okay.
That could help the network figure out if a shape is more like a cat's pointy ear or a dog's floppy ear.
Ah, okay, I get it. That makes it much clearer. So the network takes in all this data, does all these calculations, and spits out a prediction, like cat or dog. Then what?
That's where the magic of backpropagation comes in. The network compares its prediction to the actual label and sees how far off it was.
Right.
And then it goes back through every step, adjusting those weights and biases to minimize the error.
To get closer to the right answer.
Exactly. The more images it sees, the better it gets at predicting.
Like a continuous learning process.
Yeah, a feedback loop, constantly refining its understanding.
That's so cool. Now, the book also dives into building a neural network from scratch using NumPy. Is that really necessary to grasp these concepts?
It's actually super insightful. We won't always build them from the ground up, but doing it once gives you a deeper appreciation for what's going on under the hood. It's like assembling a bike. You know, once you've done it, you understand how all the parts work together.
I like that analogy. Makes sense. Okay, so let's talk PyTorch. It's obviously the star player here. Why is PyTorch so well suited for computer vision?
PyTorch is incredibly flexible for building and testing different network designs, which is crucial in computer vision. Things are always evolving. It's like having a super versatile set of building blocks. You can arrange them in any way you need. Plus, the automatic differentiation feature makes calculating those adjustments during backpropagation way easier.
So it handles all the tricky math behind the scenes.
Yep, no need to worry about complex calculus.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
Now, I'm seeing tensor objects mentioned a lot. Are those specific to PyTorch?
Tensors are basically the language of data in PyTorch. They're like multi-dimensional arrays. They can represent a single number or a whole bunch of images. And PyTorch has a whole toolbox for manipulating them. Makes working with image data super smooth.
So tensors are the building blocks of our data. PyTorch gives us the tools to work with them. Got it. What about batch size? Why is that important?
Well, imagine training a network on 1 million images, one by one.
It would take forever.
Exactly. Batch size lets us process chunks of images at once, calculate the average error, then update the weights. Much more efficient.
Makes sense. It's about finding that optimal balance, right?
Right. And speaking of efficiency, the book introduces convolutional neural networks, or CNNs.
CNNs, yeah.
They're specifically designed to work with the structure of images. They use convolutional layers to analyze those local regions, picking out features like edges, corners.
So instead of just seeing a flat array of pixels, they're recognizing patterns and relationships within the image.
Precisely. It's like being able to see both the forest and the trees. Makes them super powerful for image analysis.
I can see that. Can you give me a real-world example of how that works?
Sure, let's say you're training a model to tell the difference between cats and dogs in pictures. The first convolutional layer, it might use filters to detect basic features like edges and corners.
Okay.
The next layer, It might combine those features to recognize bigger structures like ears or tails. Finally, the last layer puts it all together. Decides, based on all those features, if it's more likely a cat or a dog.
Wow, it's like it breaks down the image into pieces and then uses that to make a decision.
That's a great way to put it, and that's just the beginning. The book goes on to explain all the parts of a CNN, like strides and padding and pooling layers.
They all play a role, huh?
Oh, yeah, a crucial role in processing that image data and reducing its dimensionality.
Wait, hold on. Dimensionality reduction. Why is that important?
Well, think about analyzing a super high-res image with millions of pixels. It would take forever and a ton of computing power.
Yeah, I can see that.
Pooling layers simplify things. They take small chunks of the image and output a single value, like the maximum or the average.
So it's like summarizing the information but keeping the most important details.
Exactly. This reduction makes the network more efficient, less prone to overfitting.
Overfitting.
Yeah, that's when a model learns the training data too well. It doesn't generalize well to new images.
This is all so fascinating. We've covered so much, from the basics of neural networks to the power of CNNs. What other groundbreaking techniques does the book have in store?
Oh, there's so much more to explore. Next time, we'll dive into things like transfer learning. That's where we harness the power of pre-trained models. We'll also look at cool applications like facial key point detection, multitask learning.
Sounds exciting. It's amazing to see how far computer vision has come and how it's changing our world. But we'll save all that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into modern computer vision with PyTorch. Last time, we explored the fundamentals of neural networks and the power of CNNs for image analysis. Are you ready to dive into even more advanced territory?
Oh, absolutely. The world of computer vision is just endlessly fascinating. I'm especially intrigued by this concept of transfer learning. It sounds like we're kind of taking a shortcut.
In a way, yeah.
Leveraging the work that's already been done,
Yeah.
to solve our own problems. Is that right?
That's a great way to put it. Transfer learning is a total game changer in computer vision. Think about it. Training a deep neural network from scratch. It requires massive data sets, huge amounts of computing power.
Yeah. It's a big undertaking.
Right. But what if we could use models that have already learned a ton of information from millions of images?
So instead of starting from zero, we're building on a foundation of existing knowledge.
Exactly. We take a pre-trained model like VGG16 or ResNet. They've already learned to recognize a huge array of features from massive data sets like ImageNet.
Okay.
Then we fine-tune them for our specific task.
So these pre-trained models have essentially learned to see the world in a general sense. Like they can identify edges, textures, shapes, even objects, regardless of the specific task they were initially trained for.
That's what makes transfer learning so powerful.
Yeah.
We're not just copying the model's knowledge, we're adapting it. It's like taking a master chef's recipe
Okay.
and tweaking it to create your own masterpiece.
I love that analogy. So how does this actually work in practice? Can you give me an example?
Let's say you want to build a system to detect different types of flowers, okay?
Okay.
Training a model from scratch, you'd need thousands of images for each flower species.
Right. That makes sense.
But with transfer learning, you can start with a pre-trained model. It already knows how to recognize general features, petals, stems, leaves,
Got it.
Then you just need a smaller data set of your specific flowers just to fine-tune the model.
So we're cutting down the training time and the amount of data we need significantly.
Big time.
What's really amazing is that transfer learning has opened doors to solving problems that were previously thought to be too complex or too data intensive.
Absolutely. And the applications are so diverse. The book talks about facial key point detection, for example. That's where we pinpoint locations of facial features, like the eyes, nose, mouth.
Okay.
This is used in everything from facial recognition to AR filters.
Wow. I can see how that would be useful.
Right.
What other examples does the book mention?
Another cool application is age and gender estimation. Imagine being able to estimate someone's age and gender just from a photograph. It's used in targeted advertising, demographic analysis, even security systems.
That's incredible. But how accurate are these models, really? It seems like a pretty difficult task.
Well, the technology's still evolving, but these models have shown really impressive accuracy, especially when they're trained on large and diverse data sets. Of course, we have to be careful about ethical considerations here. We need to make sure these models are used responsibly and not perpetuating biases.
Right, absolutely. We can't just ignore the potential impact of these technologies. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about multitask learning. It sounds like we're training a model to be a jack of all trades.
That's a great analogy. Multitask learning is all about training one model to do multiple things at the same time. So instead of having separate models for object detection, image classification, and segmentation, we can have one model that handles it all.
Like a Swiss Army knife of computer vision. What are the advantages of that?
Well, efficiency is a big one. Instead of training and maintaining multiple models, we have one that does it all.
Right.
It saves computing resources and simplifies our systems.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
But how does one model learn to do all those different tasks?
The key is to design the network in a way that lets it share information between tasks. So the early layers might learn general features that are useful for all the tasks, while later layers specialize in specific tasks.
Ah, so it's like a team of specialists working together, each contributing their expertise to solve a bigger problem.
I like that.
The book also mentions GradCam. Can you explain what that is and why it's helpful?
GradCam. That stands for Gradient-Weighted Class Activation Mapping. It's this really cool technique that lets us see which parts of an image a model is actually focusing on when it makes a prediction. It's like looking into the mind of the network and seeing what it thinks is important.
So instead of just getting a prediction, we get to understand why the model made that prediction.
Exactly. GradCam highlights the areas of the image that were most important for the output. It's super helpful for debugging models, identifying potential biases, even understanding how the model is learning.
That's really insightful. It seems like understanding how these models work is just as important as building them in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. Transparency and interpretability are so important in AI, especially as it becomes more and more present in our lives.
Right, for sure. This is all incredibly exciting, but the book also talks about the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Building these models isn't always easy.
Right.
It discusses things like imbalanced data sets, variations in object sizes, and the impact of the number of convolutional layers. Why are these challenges important to think about?
Building a computer vision model, it's rarely straightforward. Real-world data, it's messy. You might have way more pictures of cats than dogs. Objects can appear at all different sizes. Choosing the right network architecture, that's crucial.
So it's not just about picking the coolest algorithm. It's about understanding the data and choosing the right approach for that data.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that even the number of convolutional layers makes a difference. How come?
Well, too few layers, and the model might not be able to capture all the complexities of the features. Too many layers, and it might overfit to the training data. It won't generalize to new images.
So finding that balance is key.
Yeah, it's all about finding the right balance.
This highlights how important it is to experiment and fine-tune things. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation.
Exactly. Building effective computer vision models. It requires a deep understanding of both the algorithms and the data. It's all about learning, iterating, refining.
It's clear that there's so much depth to this field. We've gone from transfer learning to multitask learning, to understanding how these models make decisions and the challenges of building them. What's next on our journey?
Get ready to take your computer vision skills to the next level. We're moving on to object detection and segmentation. Not only will we identify objects, but locate them precisely within an image. We'll even outline their boundaries, pixel by pixel.
That sounds incredibly challenging. I can't wait to see how machines tackle that. But we'll save that for part 3 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into modern computer vision with PyTorch. We've covered a ton of ground, from neural networks to transfer learning, multitask learning. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And now get ready to enter a whole new world. Generative AI.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. This is where machines go beyond just understanding images.
Yeah.
They actually start creating them, right?
Exactly. We'll see how computers can generate completely new images, manipulate existing ones, and even do things that seem like straight out of science fiction.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. So the book starts with autoencoders. What are those, and why are they so important in generative AI?
Autoencoders are this unique type of neural network. They basically learn to compress data.
Like, imagine creating a super efficient ZIP file for images.
Okay, yeah.
That compressed version is called the latent space. And what's really cool is that the autoencoder can then reconstruct the original image from that compressed information.
So it's like capturing the essence of an image
Yeah,
and then rebuilding it from that concentrated form.
that's a great way to put it. This ability to encode and decode images is really powerful for anything generative. The book talks about different types of autoencoders, each with its own, strengths and uses.
Okay, let's break those down. Starting with the vanilla autoencoder, what makes it special?
Vanilla autoencoders, those are the simplest kind. They have an encoder
Okay.
that takes the image and compresses it into that latent space, and a decoder that rebuilds the image from that representation.
Uh-huh.
They're great for learning those basic features and reducing dimensionality, which is super important in computer vision.
So they're like the foundation for other autoencoder architectures.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have convolutional autoencoders, which, as you can probably guess, use convolutional layers.
Right, those were amazing.
These autoencoders capture the spatial stuff much better.
Makes sense. We already saw how good CNNs are at image analysis. So convolutional autoencoders are like the image specialists.
Yeah, they're great at learning the details, the patterns, ideal for things like image denoising or super resolution.
That's pretty impressive. What about variational autoencoders? VAEs. Those seem a bit more complicated.
VAEs add this probabilistic element to the latent space. So instead of learning a single point for each image, they learn a distribution, like a range of possible values.
Okay.
Think of it this way. A regular autoencoder might learn to represent a cat as a single point, but a VAE would represent it as a cloud of possibilities, capturing variations like different breeds, poses, lighting. You get the idea.
So VAEs are better at capturing all the variability within a category. That makes them better for generating new realistic images.
Exactly. By sampling from that distribution, they can create variations that aren't just copies of what they've seen before. It's like giving them a creative spark.
Wow. It's like teaching machines to imagine. Now, the book shows how we can visualize this latent space using TSNE.
Yeah.
What's so special about that?
PSNE. It's a technique that lets us visualize high-dimensional data in a lower-dimensional space, like 2D or 3D. What's really cool is that when we use TSNE on that latent space, we often see these clusters of similar images popping up.
So it's like creating a map of the network's understanding of the visual world.
Exactly. Similar images end up closer together in that visualization. It shows us how the autoencoder has organized its knowledge of what it's seen. You might see a cluster of cat images, another cluster of dog images, and so on.
That's so cool. Okay, but the book also talks about a less fun topic. Adversarial attacks. What are those and why should we worry about them?
Adversarial attacks, they basically exploit vulnerabilities in neural networks. By making these tiny, often unnoticeable changes to an image, it tricks the model into seeing something that's not really there, like a magic trick, but for computer vision.
That's kind of scary. How is that even possible?
Neural networks can be surprisingly sensitive to even small changes in the input. Attackers can craft these tiny changes. They manipulate the output without us even noticing.
So a model that's really good at recognizing a cat could be tricked into seeing a dog.
Yeah, just by tweaking a few pixels, it has big implications for stuff like self-driving cars or medical image analysis, where security and reliability are super important.
That makes sense. We need models that can handle those kinds of attacks.
So,
Okay, let's move on to something a little more fun. Generative adversarial networks, GANs. They seem to be all the rage in AI these days.
GANs are pretty revolutionary, yeah. They're like two networks constantly battling each other. One, the generator, tries to create realistic images. The other, the discriminator, tries to tell if an image is real or fake.
So it's like a never-ending game of cat and mouse.
Exactly. The generator gets better at creating fakes, and the discriminator gets better at spotting them. It leads to some incredibly realistic results.
That's so cool. The book mentions things like generating handwritten digits, face images, even doing image-to-image translation. Can you tell me more about that?
GANs have gotten really good at creating synthetic data that looks just like the real thing. They can generate handwritten digits, which can be used to expand training data sets for handwriting recognition. And in medicine, they've been used to create synthetic medical images. Helps with privacy concerns and when there's not enough data.
That's amazing. What really blows my mind is this image-to-image translation. The book talks about pix-to-pix. It can colorize black and white photos. How does that even work?
Pix-to-pix is a conditional GAN. It learns to map from one image to another. So for colorization, it's trained on pairs of black and white images and their color versions.
Yeah.
Over time, it figures out how to predict the right colors for different objects and scenes.
So it's like teaching a machine the concept of color and then applying it to images that don't have it. It's like having an AI artist.
I like that.
Now, the book also mentions these advanced GAN architectures. DC GANs, cycle GANs, style GANs. What's so special about them?
Those are variations of the basic GAN. Each one has its own special abilities. DC GANs use convolutional layers, in both the generator and discriminator. They're really good at making high-quality images.
So, building on the power of CNNs yet again, What about cycle GANs?
Cycle GANs are awesome because they can do this unpaired image-to-image translation.
Unpaired?
Yeah. Imagine turning a horse into a zebra or an apple into an orange. They learn to translate between different visual domains without needing to see those domains paired up.
That's incredible. It's like the machine understands the essence of what makes a horse and a zebra, without even seeing them side by side.
Yeah.
Okay, last one, stylogans. Those sound fancy.
Stylogans are known for producing incredibly realistic images, but what sets them apart is the control they give us over the style of those images. You can tweak things like age, gender, hair color, even facial expressions. It's very precise.
Wow, that's next level stuff.
Yeah.
But how do these generative AI techniques connect with other areas of AI, like reinforcement learning?
That's a great question. The book actually dives into how computer vision and reinforcement learning can work together. Imagine training an AI to play a video game or navigate a simulated world.
So machines that not only see, but also learn and interact with their environment, that's mind-blowing. How does reinforcement learning even work?
Reinforcement learning is all about agents learning by trial and error. They take actions in an environment and get rewards for good actions.
And punishments for bad ones.
Exactly. Over time, they learn to maximize those rewards. It's like training a dog with treats, but with way more sophisticated algorithms, of course.
So the agent uses computer vision to perceive the world, reinforcement learning to make decisions, and then acts based on what it learns.
You got it. The book even walks through implementing these techniques using the CRLA simulator. That's a platform for developing self-driving car algorithms. It's a great example of how these two areas of AI can work together to solve real-world problems.
This has been an incredible journey. We've gone from autoencoders to GANs, even touched on reinforcement learning. What about those newer techniques, though? Vision transformers, what about those?
Ah, yes. Vision transformers, VITs. They represent a really interesting shift in how we approach computer vision. They use self-attention mechanisms, which have been super successful in natural language processing. They're showing a lot of promise in tasks like image classification and object detection.
So we're taking ideas from the language world and applying them to vision. What makes VIT so special?
VITs, they process images as sequences of patches. Instead of a grid of pixels, it lets them capture long-range dependencies in the image better, like seeing the whole picture and understanding how different parts relate.
That's a great way to explain it. And the book also mentions multimodal learning. What's that all about?
Multimodal learning is all about combining different types of data, like text and images, to do tasks that would be impossible with just one type alone. It's like giving machines multiple senses, to understand the world.
That sounds powerful. Got any examples?
Imagine searching for images using words. Or the other way around. The book talks about CLIP. It's a model that learns from both images and text.
Okay.
So it can find the most relevant image for a description.
So we can actually describe what we're looking for,
Yeah.
and it understands the meaning, not just keywords. That would change everything for image search.
It would. And CLIP can even be used for something called zero-shot object detection and segmentation. You can detect objects the model has never even seen before just from a description.
That's unreal. It's like we're teaching machines to understand concepts, not just memorize examples. Okay, one last thing. Stable diffusion. That sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Stable diffusion is a game changer, a text-to-image model that's taken the world by storm.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It uses a technique called diffusion. Images are slowly denoised from random noise, all guided by those text prompts.
So like you whisper an idea to the machine and it paints you a picture. What about controlling those generated images? The book mentions inpainting and ControlNet.
Inpainting is like an eraser and paintbrush, but for AI. You can replace or change parts of an image using stable diffusion.
Oh, wow.
ControlNet takes it even further. It lets you fine-tune stable diffusion with extra inputs, like depth maps or those edge detection images.
So we can guide the AI a little bit?
Yeah.
Give it a sketch or an outline to follow?
Exactly. And to wrap it all up, the book even covers how to deploy these models.
Oh, right.
For real-world applications. It talks about APIs, Docker, all that. It's really a complete guide from research to production.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've explored generative AI, autoencoders, GANs, even a little bit of reinforcement learning.
It's been a blast. And the crazy thing is, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for this field. And thanks to modern computer vision with PyTorch, we're well equipped to be a part of it. To our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the power of computer vision. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep an eye out for the amazing things AI is bringing to our world.